Alright, testing the mic. We got the face shield up and rolling down the driveway. We're going to talk today, and hopefully this time it will actually be caught on the camera. That would be the coolest. Hey, Solo Scout here. Alright, so today we are going to try out the new microphone setup in the helmet here. After trying a couple different things, I had just about decided to go to a silent vlog format. I'd seen several obviously on YouTube where there's no live commentary, maybe a descriptor title or subtitle or card once in a while, but I just about talked myself into that. But a couple of my kids said that they like to hear me talk, or they wanted to hear, for the grandkids to hear. So I decided to give it one more shot. Another investment in gear. And today we're running the GoPro Hero 7 Black version instead of the silver version, and we have the GoPro external mic adapter, and then plugged into that we've got a boom mic, a tip ring sleeve boom mic that you would plug into a gaming headset. So it's a mic on a flexible boom that terminates in a tip ring sleeve connector, and it's plugged into the GoPro mic adapter. So you don't have to worry about loose cables. It just tucks up underneath the chin skirt of my Nolan N102 helmet. And I did a couple test videos to make sure that it actually worked, and it sounded good, so we're going to give it a try today. There's not a whole lot that I can troubleshoot on the fly, so if the audio cuts out, then that'll be it. Alright. We're going to hit one of my favorite riding spots in the Mark Twain National Forest. I really enjoy the forest roads. For someone like me that doesn't have a lot of off-road experience, off-roading skill, off-roading capability, the forest roads provide, hey, there we go. The forest roads provide an off-road experience for the beginner like me. The overwhelming majority of my motorcycle experience is street bikes. Now, of course, like a lot of people, I started out on a mini bike off-road bike. But even then, the off-roading was pretty tame compared to what people call normal off-roading. But as soon as I was of driving age, you know, on highway driving age, I went to street bikes and never looked back. But now that I'm older, or just plain old, I find myself remembering the speed of those inline 4 street bikes, but I don't have to have that. I would much rather have a bike that I can pick up if it falls over, that I can push around in the gravel, that I can reliably, confidently ride on pavement and off pavement. That's probably the best description I can give on what my riding entails these days, is off pavement rather than saying off-road. I'm not hitting the single tracks. There's really not, you know, established single track access to the public widespread in Missouri. There are some parks, like if you watch my St. Joe State Park video, that's a really nice area, but it's not free to use, jump in anytime you want and call it a day. It's a good facility if you want to truck in and spend the day, or like I did, camp and enjoy the park. There's another one going the other direction from me, and I'm going to try it out. I think it's called Sutton Bluff. It's on the list of to-do, but it's a little farther down the list. What you're seeing right here, this is the bulk of my riding. This is a county road, so it's not out in the middle. It's not abandoned or unmaintained. It is maintained, but just a curving through the woods gravel road. And the Honda 300L does a great job on it. We're coming up on 3,000 miles on the Honda, so I'm going to give you my impressions of what I think about the Honda so far. Okay, so we've turned off our county road there, Camel Hump Road, KP Road, Camel Hump Road, and we're now on Forest Service Road. So 2,860 miles on the Honda. What do I think? Well, I think pretty much whatever other YouTuber and reviewer and test rider has thought. It's a great little bike. You know, it's marketed middle of the road. When I say that, you know, in the middle of on pavement, off pavement riding. And yes, it is geared and designed for maybe newer riders, maybe beginner riders, something like that. There are features that you can tell have those riders in mind, but it's not a beginner only. It's not a beginner only bike. There's just plenty of power. The transmission is well designed. First gear will let you tractor up just about anything as long as you've got traction, and I'll talk about that later. So, in my opinion, what makes it, what features are on the bike that were put on there thinking of newer riders or beginning riders? Well, the suspension for one thing. When you dampen the feedback from a vehicle, any vehicle, there's less of a shock or startling effect to the operator. And if you can minimize that shock or being startled every time you hit a bump or every time you go around a curve or hit the brakes or what have you, it allows the operator to ease into the operation of the vehicle. So that's a big point for beginners. The suspension is very soft, it's springy, it dampens those bumps and dips a lot. And of course that comes at the expense of performance off-road. So you get off-road and you start really hitting it, well, the suspension will let you know that it wasn't made for that. And you'll find the rear suspension talked about with just about anybody who's ridden the bike. And it's not a bad thing, it's just something you need to be aware of, that if you are a more experienced off-road rider, you'll want to look into an upgrade. My bike still has the stock shock on the back, the stock suspension. The preload is cranked all the way up or down, whichever way you want to look at it. It's loaded all the way up. Pretty up there. That's National Forest land there. We're on National Forest land now, obviously. We're on the forest roads. Anyway, so I've got the preload cranked, and it helps a bit when I've got the gear on the back. Today, just the day bag. But when I put all the camping gear on there, it does help a little bit. Love to have an aftermarket suspension setup, but what they cost right now, even the less expensive options, I could get a new helmet, which would be the Scorpion EXO-AT950, the dual pane version in black, medium size. I could get one of those, and I could get a Seat Concepts seat for the Honda. That would be the Seat Concepts XL version. That is an extra wide version, not tall, not short, but a wide version of the seat. and that would let an old man like me sit a little more comfortably on the bike. My last bike, I'm sick of hearing me talk about my last bike, but I had a Corbin seat on it, and I bought it so that my better half could ride with me, and really liked that seat. So I'm looking forward to upgrading the seat one of these days. But as I said, I could get a seat and a new helmet for the cost of the rear suspension. And even though I'm riding on some bumpy stuff now, even with the stock suspension, it's perfectly manageable. It's nowhere near as good as a performance off-road suspension, but it is perfectly manageable. So there's my thoughts on the rear suspension. Love to have a better one, but I can make do with the stock just fine. So right here is a campsite that's been set up. Now, this is state forest, or excuse me, this is national forest land, so this isn't really, you won't find this on their map, on their usage maps, but camping, dispersed camping is allowed in the national forest, so it's evidently a maintained spot that is frequented, but I've never camped here. But I may change it. Now, get through the water there. Oh, that's just the best. Little Honda it just goes through that stuff, and I know that wasn't anywhere near what a lot of people ride through, but for me, it's confidence boosting that you can just put the bike in first and just get right through it. Alright, we'll switch gears for a minute. You can tune me out. We're going to talk about where we're going. Hey, that's new. Sweet! So, we are going up to what's listed on the map as Lost Lake. And basically, this was an unplanned lake that came about from the mining operations that went across this spot here we're gonna dead end at, and filled in the bank after they had some problems with a bridge, and of course it created a dam which created Lost Lake, and was a decent fishing spot for a while. But then the dam broke and all the water went away. And that area over there was the Lost Lake, and then it washed out, and then there was a beaver dam for a while, and the water filled back up a little, but it's beaver dam's gone now as well. But it's a nice spot. It's super overgrown right now. I guess that's alright. It just means that there's not a lot of traffic up through here. So that's the dead end here at Lost Lake. In the fall or spring, when There's not so many weeds. The rocks are a neat little place to sit and take a break. Down that road, or that trail there, in one of my earlier videos, I took that trail all the way through what used to be Lost Lake and hit another forest road. But today we're going to go back and head off to the right, see if we can make it up that hill. Back to the critique of the 2021 CRF300L. Let's talk about the engine a little bit. So, never having ridden the 250L, I don't have anything to compare it to. All I can do is give my assessment of how this engine works for me. When I first got the bike, I took it out on the pavement, try to get my bearings and understanding of the motorcycle. Get some cobwebs out of my nose here. I'll just leave that open. Huh. I don't remember that. Somebody's taking off that way. Yeah, I kind of thought that went all the way across. Alright, there's an end. Anyway, I found that the engine I found myself shifting a lot more, obviously, than, you know, a big street bike. The power is just a big difference in this 300. A lot less power. And there's two hills that I have to climb on my way to town on the pavement, and they're pretty good size. You see them in my videos. And I would find myself downshifting to 5th, and in the early days even all the way down to 4th to make it up. I was doing the speed limit. The speed limit's 55 through there, and at that RPM the engine just didn't have the power to pull me up the hill. Well, as the miles started accumulating on the engine, you know, you got that break-in period, I started noticing that the engine was obviously smoother. I mean, that's the whole idea of the break-in. But it seemed to have a little more grunt left in it. And after that first oil change at 600 miles, it got pretty noticeable that I had a little more room to spare. Get rid of that. A little more room in the power department. Alright, we're here. See, we were there, and we cut through that way. Pretty neat little woods run there. And then we're going to take this forest road back, and it's smooth sailing from here. Anyway, so after about 1,500 miles on the engine, I could come up the lesser of those two hills in 6th gear, and it was able to pull me up I still had to downshift to 5th on the steeper of the two hills. Now, if I'd go up those hills doing 60 miles an hour above the speed limit, that pulls the engine into, you know, obviously higher RPMs, and it is making a little more horsepower there, and you don't have to downshift. But basically overall, after 1,000 miles, the motor started impressing me more for its size, and now coming up on 3,000 miles, I'm pleased with the engine and how well it can pull me and my gear around. Of course, the biggest thing that you get from the smaller but well-tuned motor is this right here. 68.5 miles to the gallon, and I haven't reset that estimator in a while, so that's a pretty good mix of this kind of stuff and on pavement and a little bit of off-road, or a little bit of two-track, I should say. Real happy with the engine. As small as it is, I'm happy with how well it performs on this platform, on this bike. Alright, moving on. I talked briefly about getting a new seat, or wishing for a new seat. The seat that's on here is your typical dual sport seat, and it's fine. Just I'm old and decrepit, and you know, I wouldn't mind having a Barca lounger for a seat. Most rides don't even notice that it's a dual sport style. Only when I get on the pavement and do one of those 200, 300 mile trips that I wish I had something different. And everything that I talk about on the bike, I say knowing full well that it was designed to be that middle of the road bike, that dual sport type of motorcycle. And anytime you start picking things out and saying, well, I wish it had better this, or performed better here or there, you kind of move that slider from the center of its ability, and you move it toward one thing, but you're moving it away from another. So if I was to, I don't know, put an aftermarket exhaust system and have the ECU reprogrammed, or something like a power commander. I had a power commander on my old bike, my last bike. Something like that, I could eke out a few more horsepower probably. Well, not probably. I could eke out a few more horsepower and move that slider toward the performance side. But then what I've done is I've moved that slider away from the economy side of the bike. And I really like the mileage that I get, and I don't mind the exhaust sound that it makes. You know, I don't need it to sound any meaner. I know it doesn't sound mean at all, but I'm okay with that. But that's an example of moving the bike towards one riding style and moving it away from another. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just need to keep that in mind. That you start changing things, and it's going to take away from one aspect to make another aspect better. That thought, we'll talk about tires, the rubber. Boy, there's a subject you can get lost in. The stock tires, I don't think there's anybody that gives them a glowing review. And fortunately for me, as I've said many times, my skill level is so low that I don't know the difference. I don't hit the technicals and the challenging single tracks and things like that simply because there isn't a lot of that around here, and that's not my major purpose of the bike. So So the stock tires, the rear tire is about ready to be replaced. I have worn that sucker down, and that's mainly due to my heavy hand on the throttle on pavement and my heavy foot on the rear brake. I am a rear brake kind of guy. I understand that the front brake provides most of the stopping power on pavement, but I am heavy on the rear brake. So the rear tire is going to be changed pretty soon, and I'm really looking at the Shinko 700 series. The 700 series is listed as a 60/40, 60 on road, 40 off road. And that's close to my riding use. A 70/30, even an 80/20 would probably be closer to what I ride, according to a lot of motorcyclists, a lot of dual sport riders. But I like the traction I get on the gravel roads. That the stock tires give me. So I don't want to get too far away from there. I don't want to move that slider too far towards the pavement carving side and lose my confidence on this gravel and dirt roads. So I think this Shinko 700 is probably going to be my pick, and we'll give that a whirl. We'll leave the stock tire on the front. It's got a lot of life left in it, and I'm happy with how it performs on the gravel. That's my biggest concern, so we'll run it until it is wore out, basically.
This is Solo Scout. I'm Oscar Mike.